Hi, my name is Yanjaa. I just saw a squirrel, I got distracted. Hi, my name is Yanjaa, and I can say that slowly if you want to memorize it. It's Yanjaa. I know it says Yanjaa, but it's pronounced Yanjaa. Today I want to talk about the book that introduced me to the world of memory and that completely changed my life. And that book is called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. Mine says Moonwalk med Einstein because it's in Swedish. It was gifted to me by a college friend of mine called Leona while we were studying in Sweden. The first time I encountered the book, I was rushing from college to home and I saw this book in the pocket shop and it said Moonwalking with Einstein, and I looked at the cover and it just kind of it looked so intriguing. I just wanted to know what it was about, so I started skimming, but then I kept standing there and reading it, and then the store clerk started looking at me funny, so then I put it back. As a frugal student, I went to the library right next door called Studiebibliotek, and they just so happened to have the book in English, and I read it on the way home on the subway, and then I read it at home, and it was like 1 a.m. and I had finished reading it in one night because it was so intriguing. So even if you're not interested in memory techniques or you think they're not for you, this book is really good. It's recommended by Bill Gates and recommended by me. Our recommendations are at the same level. So the book is about Joshua Foer, the author, a journalist who was on assignment to write about the US Memory Championships. And while he's there, he's really intrigued by the seemingly enormous memory capacity of these participants. He starts talking to them, and one of them starts telling him that anyone can do this. He's not convinced, but then he starts training, and then he starts training enough to realize that maybe he can compete at the next year's championship. You follow this man and his journey throughout the intricacies of the world of memory, which is both super nerdy and widely just human. This is a book to create a solid foundational understanding of memory techniques and memory as a whole. It is a great and fascinating story. It introduces fancy things like the major system and the memory palace. They sound really fancy, but are really the basics of memory techniques. And I always say this, that memory is easier done than said. You always sound crazy when you try to explain memory techniques, but when you start using it, it starts getting very self-explanatory, in my opinion. So why I like this book more than some other books that might be more in-depth about techniques and specific things you can use to apply to law school, med school, even though there are lots of non-fiction books that just say do this and that, A, B, C, D, E of memory, they're not as intriguing and they don't pull you in, and you ironically don't remember the techniques as well as when you read this book, in my opinion. This ties into the whole memory thing, that when you put things in context and you make it more emotional or more engaging, you will remember it better than if you're just regurgitating or following a set of rules. The brain has a tendency to remember story better than just facts, so that's why. The one big issue I have personally with this book is that it emphasizes visual imagery. It says oh, we remember things visually and we're such visual beings and we remember visual memories more than we remember anything else. But in my experience, that isn't necessarily the entire truth. I have a recollection, have a narrative and visual recollection of reading on Alex Mullen, the current World Memory and US Memory Champions blog, talking about Dr. Boris Nikolai Konrad's study about how a lot of top competitors in the field of memory use a narrative and a story more than they use heavy visual imagery. So sometimes, even though you saw somebody do something, you have this whole narrative and storyline and arc of why that person was doing that thing that may sometimes skew what you actually saw. The book has some certain emphasis on how the brain likes what's fun instead of what's boring, which is true. Likes to make the abstract into something concrete, which is true. And then it emphasizes how the brain remembers sexual things and violent things more, which is in my opinion not true. When I've talked to many of the top athletes or top competitors, you see that many of them have, for the most part, very politically correct, safe for work, just normal imagery or narratives instead of then he did this gross thing and all this stuff. And it says more about the creators and the authors and the movie makers than it says about what is actually true for you. But I mean, whatever floats your boat. If you're interested in that, you can experiment with that. And it's some of my images are really boring. It'll just be something simple, then it'll be something dramatic, something lovely, something wonderful, something simple, and it kind of goes up and down. So not everything has to be so visually extreme or interesting or fun. There needs to be a balance. I obviously recommend this book a lot. I have a recollection of many of the top 10 in the world, myself included, saying that this is the book that got them into it. I mean, if it worked for them, it should work for you. This is the book that I read. It doesn't have to be the book that you read, whatever floats your boat. And this has been a first Memory Monday, and I'm planning to do this as much as I can every Monday. So if you have questions or comments, please write them in a public comment section on YouTube or on Facebook or on my blog yanjaa.com. And you can also read my little notes and commentary while reading Moonwalking with Einstein on yanjaa.com as well. So hope you have a memorable Monday and see you next week. Bye! Hi!